distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Dubai Dialogue 2020. It is a real pleasure to host you all at this event, and I thank you all for taking the time to be here today. As many of you know, Dubai Dialogue is Dubai's largest annual sustainability conference, drawing attendees from all sectors to work together towards a united vision for sustainability. The conference has become an important platform for collaboration on sustainability issues and initiatives. We have an exciting program lined up for you today. Dubai Dialogue will bring a lineup of some of the most distinguished thought leaders and practitioners in the field of organizational recovery and sustainability to discuss in depth the issue of surviving and thriving sustainably post-COVID-19. We will be running a live Q&A session at the end of the event, so we have enabled the Ask a Question feature. If you have any questions during the session, just post them there. During the panel, we will present all the questions you've posted to the panelists. Before we dive into the event, I would like to invite to the platform Dr. Bil'eed Rattab, Chief Economist and Senior Director of the Economic Research and Sustainable Business Development Sector at Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to give the welcome remarks.
Thank you, Iman, for your introduction. Dear CSR friends, I'm extremely happy to welcome all of you to this platform to discuss the ins and outs of sustainability and the COVID-19 challenges that is being imposed on all of us. A special welcome to Mr. Vijay, Martin, Steve, and Mr. Ibrahim. We are very happy and honored to have all of you here with us in the panel. This is actually the 12th Dubai Dialogue Conference organized by the Dubai Chamber Center for Responsible Business, which was established in 2004. The Center for Responsible Business provides useful tools, strategies, and knowledge sharing opportunities to the business community to adapt and integrate responsible and transparent business practices. The aim is to turn our business community into one of the most responsible and sustainable business communities in the world, with expectation that this practice will enhance the general business reputation of business operations in Dubai and strengthen the responsibility and brand from within. And finally, resulting in higher competitiveness and sustainability for the long term. Consistently, since the start, Center for Responsible Business has launched a variety of CSR programs to provide knowledge sharing opportunities and value-added assistance to our businesses. Lack of awareness of CSR concepts and best practices has always been a challenge of CSR worldwide that has been challenging us as well. Therefore, it was essential for the Center for Responsible Business to first narrow the scope of work to Dubai operating businesses, and second, provide a variety of tailored CSR programs to suit different sectors, size, stakeholders' interests, and specific needs, with strict ownership in hands of the business itself. One of these programs is the Dubai Dialogue. The conference is actually a unique platform bringing together perspectives from both government, businesses, and academia to discuss sustainability issues, gauge success, and recommend higher-end and best-in-class CSR practices. Dubai Dialogue today is about surviving and thriving sustainably post-COVID-19. This will be the theme for our discussions of today. An opportunity to hear from experts the basic principles underlying CSR in the era of COVID-19. The story is still to be continued. What has changed? What are the new trends? And what are the challenges of CSR practitioners during the actual health care crisis that is unprecedented and its unprecedented impact on the business community? On the other hand, Dubai Chamber Center for Responsible Business has just launched its Sustainability Week campaign, You might be aware of it. Under the motto, let's create a healthy and happiness workplace. On October 18, it has been launched. It will last up to November 5. This campaign is emphasizing the significance of the employees and management teams and their commitment to maintain and safeguard organizational capabilities that are going to strengthen the organizational resilience during the crisis times by absorbing the unintended shocks and risk management. Subsequent to this campaign, the Sustainability Week will kick off on November 8th and last to November 12th to share and cherish the best practices in CSR of employees' health and happiness. The program will consist of CEOs dialogue to highlight and share innovative CSR strategies surrounding health and happiness in the workplace, highly organized roundtable discussions, and multi-stakeholders consultations to elaborate on CSR best practices, tools, and the shared solutions. In addition to a research program that has been launched to gauge the current best practices and find out how is actually CSR being involved in the field and how it has helped businesses survive and win the fight against COVID-19. Actually, today's Dubai Dialogue is paving the way to the upcoming CSR programs too. It will certainly emphasize the role of employees' health and well-being as a crucial part of CSR practices in the workplace. A healthy and happy organization will certainly have differential advantages compared to an unhealthy and unsafe organization. This is key to first survive the current crisis of COVID-19 and recover with new built-up capabilities, which will serve to cope with future shocks. In other words, the human factor is and remains pivotal for sustainability in the short as well as in the long term. The White Chamber's Center for Responsible Business assures you that CSR as a business practice will continue to drive our economy and will evolve to transform conventional business strategies into robust business models that demonstrate sustainability, innovation, and resilience. CSR will not fade away from the corporate agenda in our region. On the contrary, it will become the ultimate source of inspiration for our future generations. Finally, I wish you all a pleasant and informative discussions, and thank you all for being with us today. Thank you very much. Iman, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Belaid. We will now give the floor to Professor Vijay Pereira, the Associate Professor of Strategic and International Business at Khalifa University, who will be giving the keynote speech. Welcome, Dr. Vijay.
Okay, good morning. Thank you, Iman. I thank the Dubai Chamber, represented by Dr. Belaid, Dr. Kemal, Dr. Sangeeta, Mr. Charles, of course, Ms. Iman, and Mr. Atif, to invite me today to this very interesting and a very important topic. While we are still trying to navigate, and that's the title of my keynote today, is how do we sustainably navigate the COVID-19 to first of all survive and then to thrive. I'm going to draw upon different concepts, but also many examples from across the world. But also I will talk about the local challenges we face in the UAE. And so I start with what are we talking about in terms of the next normal. We often talk about the new normal or the next normal or the next new normal. But what is it that's driving this new normal? Of course, it's the COVID. But for businesses, the McKinsey report has identified 6 such areas. And so the first really is looking at how demand is changing, how business demands are changing. And that's straightforward, that's obvious, but it's also one of the biggest challenges for businesses. Whether it is business to business or business to customer or business to government, it's still, the demand is becoming more and more challenging. Now, what sort of challenges in terms of demand? Suddenly we see an increase in technology. We see that frontline workers are facing challenges in terms of attending work. We see governments across the world trying to identify what is going to happen the next day. And so these challenges are, as compared to any other crisis, moving from hour to hour, from day to day, from week to week, and they're very fluid in a sense. And to keep up on that becomes a bigger challenge. And so not only demand, as I said, also the workforce, especially the frontline workers, whether it's supermarkets, whether it is the doctors in the clinics or the nurses, whether it is health and safety people, their job can never stop. And in a sense, these people become the frontline people facing these challenges. And businesses, of course, in terms of their supply chain, have always struggled to be resilient. How do we fight challenges? How do we increase our resilience? And supply chains across the world, the UAE being no exception, have had to very quickly become more and more resilient. Because imagine, give you an example of the food chain. Now we need food on the table, and across the world during the pandemic, we saw that any compromise on that supply chain would be a problem. The Western world, we saw how the toilet rolls were quickly running out and how panic buying, for example, even basics such as milk in the initial days created a lot of issues. And so resiliency in terms of global supply chains and local supply chains were affected, and that was another aspect in terms of the next normal. Now, based on all of these, regulation became very important. The governments were helping small businesses, large businesses began to cut back on several things. People in the workforce were told, please be careful, come into work. No, actually, now you wait. And so regulation was affected, and that created a lot. Fast forward to from when it started to today, we are still in uncertain times, and the governments and the regulators are facing these problems, which is again affecting businesses on a day-to-day basis. And while we speak, while we gather, we have seen a spike in the number of cases again. The so-called second wave has come in across the world. Today's article in the newspaper talked about how the UAE is no different in terms of that spike. And so what do we hold for the future, and how do we deal with these things as businesses? So these are 6 areas that have defined and driven the next normal. And that has led to a new customer and consumption patterns from across the world. Again, in July, McKinsey did a brief study, and here McKinsey identified how that more and more, whether it's small or big businesses, they began to use more technology online, which again put a lot of pressure on those that had not invested, those that were not able to understand technology, to begin to then say, now is the time that we go tech, that we use online platforms. Very interestingly, the grocer and the property management of where I live in Abu Dhabi began to go online, and they designed apps very quickly, and which meant that customers were also then beginning to use more and more online tools and apps as customers. But in that process, also what is happening is that more and more customers are beginning to switch from brands. 2 days ago, I asked my students, where do they shop groceries? And they said it depends on convenience. It depends on what they want. And then one of the key aspects was how, because of the conditions, they begin to switch from, let's say, if you're shopping in Carrefour, they would go to a Lulu, which is closer and which is more effective for them. And so this again is an opportunity for organizations, new startups and so on, to build upon that customer base, retain that loyal customer, and look for new customers. And the third but not the least is then that global, local sort of challenge, a globalization, as we call it in the literature, in academia, and more dependence on foreign items and foreign, became less. And this is again one of the key sustainable principles we talk about, is how we need to be self-sufficient. And I think the COVID has led to, this pandemic has led to that sort of dilemma of how we depend more and more lesser on global brands and global products, and look at how we can self-sustain ourselves locally. And across the world, this has been the case. And so here we can see again this changing customer and consumption patterns, and that includes the UAE as well, really. And in a sense, then businesses have to respond to this. And so here in these first couple of slides, I'm setting the scene of where we are and what we are facing as businesses. Of course, it's not exhaustive, but at least gives us a starting point to think. What I do now is identify 6 big sustainability issues because of the COVID-19. And of course, before the COVID hit, small or big organizations in terms of sustainability followed the ESG, i.e. the environmental, social, and governance model of being sustainable. And the pandemic has shown, and as Dr. Belaid was saying, more emphasis is now on the S, social, be it your employees, be it your customers, be it people at the bottom of the value chain. All of this, the focus has moved more on the S within the ESG. Also, like I mentioned previously, this dependence on technology has also led to certain points such as human rights and privacy implications. And we hear stories every day, really. My recent research on the migrant workers in India and how, when the lockdown was declared in India, the reliance on technology, such as booking train tickets to go back to rural places, and the poor people didn't have the technology, didn't have the mobiles, and that realization was not there. And if we fast forward again to today's day and age, in terms of the increased use on technology, again, privacy implications, how do we cope with that going forward? If the reliance is going to be more and more on technology, how then is it going to be sustainable, especially for those at the bottom of the pyramid? Supply chains, as I mentioned, under enormous pressure. I gave you the example of food as one industry. It could be, the basic needs such as electricity or water in different countries, especially the developing countries. It becomes very difficult. And as we've seen again, how can this be sustainable going forward, especially because of the uncertainty? And we have seen stories from across the world of job losses, dislocation, people being laid off, a heavy economic burden then on not only themselves, but on society, on their families. What do they do? And what is the responsibility then of businesses in terms of sustaining this? How can we then be sustainable in terms of moving forward towards the future, which is again uncertain? Now, one good thing that has come out of this is probably the effect on the environment because of less movement, because of lockdowns. And we have seen that this has had an effect on the environment. And the World Economic Forum has come up with certain statistics based on where we are, which I will talk about in the future slides. But this is one thing probably that among the ESG has, we probably are in a position that we have given a good head start by default and on the environment. Now, how do we take this forward? That's going to be another big question in the future, because you know, inshallah, when we find the vaccine and everything is back to normal, will we then ignore the planet? Will we then ignore the environment? That is another key question to keep in mind. And last but not the least is that it has had immense effect on people's health and well-being, physical as well as psychological. We as the human race have always been social. We have always taken for granted social movement, whether it is festivals or whether it is on a day-to-day basis, living life, and suddenly the lockdown has put a lot of pressure on our health, both physical as well as mental. And so here I have identified 6 big sustainability issues that again have an impact not only on society, but on businesses and how businesses then can respond. Okay, now there are key questions that one needs to start with, and key philosophical questions are important to go to the basis of them. And I start with the key question of what is the purpose of a business? Why do businesses exist? What are they for? Who do they exist for? What is their prime objective? Yeah, and this philosophical question is very important to reflect upon in terms of today's session, not only for us, but for across the world. And again, what has the pandemic forced us to change as a business? Of course, we've seen the crisis is about. We've seen the drivers. We have seen what the new normal is going to be. We have seen uncertainty. And so what is it that we change in our ethos, our existence as a business? That's my second philosophical question. My third is that if we are to change, and why, what is the role of leadership? And how do leaders in businesses guide and make decisions in terms of that responsibility? And last but not the least, businesses exist for a purpose. Where is their focus? What is the role of leader? And finally, the Latin term cui bono, which is for whom? For whom do all of this happen? From their existence to their survival to their thriving. And so these key philosophical questions then lead us to think about the paradoxical view of 2 key views. Here we are trying to answer the questions I posed on the previous slide. Why do businesses exist? Yes. And so one key view has been the shareholder, the business owner, or the bottom line, i.e. profits. Yeah, it's obvious, yeah. Businesses have to have profit. And as Milton Friedman argued, the purpose of business is business itself. The social responsibility of business is to get profits. But that's one view. The second view is the stakeholder view. And Edward Freeman talks about how every stakeholder in a business, so let's say we are a supermarket, our primary business is to get goods and pass it on to customers and earn profit. But in that process, Ed Freeman says, we also take into consideration suppliers, people who produce the goods, society, communities, the environment, all of these. And that's the stakeholder theory, whether it's called corporate social responsibility or social responsibility. But then the Scottish economist Adam Smith, almost 300 years ago, says that, hang on, if I am a business and my sole purpose is to earn profit, in that process, I am helping the whole society and I'm being responsible. So let me give you an example. Microsoft, yes. So Microsoft is again in a monopolistic position because every one of us use the product. Bill Gates is the richest person. But in that process, what Adam Smith is arguing with Microsoft as my example is that many people across the world have jobs. They work for Microsoft. You and me use the products. You have the Bill Gates Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where he's giving away everything because he's rich. And so that invisible hand of being a profit maximizer is also helping everybody anyway. And so this is the paradoxical view of the purpose of business. Where am I going with this? Ed Freeman. Yeah. Now, Ed Freeman, I met a few times, and this is a classic quote by Ed Freeman. This picture is taken in 2014 in Berlin. And I asked him in 2014 about his quote here. And he says that this good citizenship needs to be what businesses are thriving for. They need to be good citizens. And quite interestingly, he says, of course, business have to earn a profit. It's like business's life, yes? They have to produce red blood corpuscles. They have to breathe to live. But in that process, he says, how can businesses be passionate to change the world? And so Ed Freeman talks about that being that good citizen, in a sense. And when we are faced in today's day and age with a pandemic, why can't businesses take into consideration that social responsibility? But there again, very importantly, first of all, one needs to survive and then think about the other. I often tell my students, it's like when in turbulent times you are in an aircraft and the pilot makes the announcement, yeah, please wear the oxygen mask first before you can help somebody else. And so in a sense, we are of course there to survive in the first instance and then help others. But there are arguments that go even further and say that in that process, we don't just need to look after only ourselves. We need to look after and be responsible towards the others. Because business owners, business leaders are also agents. We go back to that philosophical question about why do businesses exist? You know, what is the purpose of business? And who do they serve? This is the key word. Do you serve only yourself, or do you serve everybody and in that process serve yourself? So this is the paradox again that we are thinking about. Because as leaders, we take decisions and we need to make a call of whether we are making responsible strategies, policies, and practices. And again, the key question for whom? Is it only for the shareholders or for everyone else? Now, in more practical terms, being a good citizen and during the COVID, still taking into consideration others, is it a cost or is it an investment? As Professor Prahlad from the London Business School says, doing good and doing well. You don't have to choose, you can do both. And in doing good, you can do well, and by doing well in the process, you also do good. So there is this trade-off in a sense of why should businesses look beyond themselves? Yeah, who are they responsible for beyond the profit maximization, or beyond making sure that they are not only surviving and thriving, and in that process also doing things. So there are different approaches. First of all, as you can see on the screen here, you have the laissez-faire approach where people or businesses do things because they are required to by the law and they just tick the box. Yeah. The second is a little bit beyond that of enlightenment and thinking that, you know what, in the long term we will benefit, so let's do good anyway. We have a good brand, people will think we are doing good, and hence we gain business. And then you have, at the end, the shaper of society, that they apply their own ethics, they influence policy, they are the trendsetters, they go beyond and above the requirement and beyond and above profit maximization. So anything that they do is by default linked to their very DNA. And again, one can argue that the newer or smaller businesses first think about themselves. But then again, on the other hand, you have an increase in social entrepreneurship, or social entrepreneurs who their starting point is that let's do good for people, and in that process, we will earn profit. And so there are different ways in which we can look at being a responsible citizen and comply in this challenging times towards social responsibility. Now, Michael Porter, the strategist, talks about how businesses can, on their own, only tick the box with being socially responsible, or they can create social value by bringing together the economic and the social. And here you can see a list that identifies what the older organizations were doing versus what is now seen as an increasing trend of bringing together the economic and the social. And so on the left here, you can see that organizations who related themselves purely to social responsibility, their value was just doing good. Whereas on the right, the value is both bringing together the economic and the social benefits. Again, on the left, they looked at being a good citizen, a responsible citizen, and they used to do philanthropy and tick the box by being sustainable. But here on the right, joint company and community, it's the same process. It's one world, one challenge, and hence it is together. And on the left, again, it was discretionary, but now it becomes integral, and all your competitors are doing it. So you are, in a sense, pushed to do it and behave responsibly. And that becomes, again, integral to your profit maximization. It becomes the agenda of your company. And again, in terms of a cost or a budget, how much do you spend? It is, again, relative to the company budget. It is ingrained, it is involved, it is within that, as opposed to what used to happen, or some firms that all think that, okay, profit maximization, and then we give only 5%, whatever we earn. And nowadays, according to Michael Porter, that can change. And so you see at the end of my slide here, the key question: during COVID-19 and thereafter, how can businesses create a sustainable shared value system, and will that make more sense? This is an important question to reflect upon going forward. Of course, like I said, surviving and thriving in that order. And so tomorrow's post-COVID organization will look like this. Organizations will have to have an operating model and will have to redesign themselves and re-strategize to be more flatter in terms of decision-making, in terms of hierarchy. They'll need to also be fast and quick in terms of speed, because in terms of decision-making, in terms of serving their customers. Also, they need to work across different functions, collaborate with each other. Recently, Dr. Kamal Melahi and myself did research and published a paper on how those big firms and small firms and governments across the world need to collaborate and find solutions to develop a vaccine. Our recent work talks about how that collaboration becomes extremely, extremely important. Also, organizations need to be flexible. They need to be nimble, is what the literature talks about. Being flexible, being nimble, being able to move from plan A to B and to change their strategies, change their policies, change their practices. And dynamism, agility, and resilience are the other key things. So here you can see that all of these things that you can, on the left lead to what on the right are improved outcomes, be it speed, be it responsiveness, be it efficiency, be it performance. And the bottom line again for any business is how can they deliver goods and services that are better, faster, and cheaper. And this tomorrow's post-COVID organization is going to look like this. I think those organizations who are looking at the future and want to be not only survive and thrive will need to work towards this. And all of these things on the left, as you can see here, are, again, you don't need to choose either or. You probably need to be inclusive and, of course, earn your profit, but also not forget that in that process, you can be socially responsible. And so the Accenture report, the latest Accenture report here, talks about how the business landscape is changing. On the left, you can see the understanding about the progression of the pandemic, and on the right, how society or the responses of businesses towards society. And I won't go through this list, but point number 7 is one of the important things. Companies here are increasingly focusing on their stakeholder concerns versus purely on profit and shareholder interest. So yes, the latest trend is that businesses have realized that social responsibility is also linked to both their surviving as well as thriving. And so how can this threat be turned into an opportunity? Of course, not all industries are equal and not all industries are immune in terms of what businesses they are in when it comes to exposure to social responsible behavior. But they can be selective again, and again, organizations, of course, have to survive, but in that sense, are they inclusive? Are they looking at the social responsibilities along with that survival? Because the age-old saying is that collectively we can fight it and survive, or we can only look after ourselves. So you need to be, it's a straightforward thing, but not as straightforward possibly if you are a business who is struggling to survive. So replanning is what organizations across the world are looking at. So here is an opportunity, a fantastic opportunity really for organizations across the world. How can they, first of all, how can organizations in the first instance focus upon themselves, but in that process reset, re-energize, refocus, re-strategize, reshape, realign, rebuild, and reimagine. I was listening to John Lennon's song last night, and that reimagination, that dream that the world can be more sustainable, and organizations in that process will need to be more resilient and more agile. Because at the end, the triple bottom line, as we say, the planet, people, and profit, and how that has affected us and where we are headed in terms of a business, in terms of the future, because the future is not only for us, it's for everyone. It's of course for the planet, and the lockdown has resulted, according to the World Economic Forum, like I mentioned previously, in a lesser CO2 emission, and it has fallen by 8%. But we have, like I said, this is a fantastic opportunity. Post-pandemic, what do we do as organizations? This is probably a supernatural phenomena that has resulted in one good thing on the planet, the environment. How do we take it forward post-pandemic? Also, the COVID has been hailed as the big equalizer in terms of society. Our focus towards how the poor and the underprivileged have, as was expected in any crisis, the hardest hit, and how we as businesses can pick up from there. Professor Prahlad from the London Business School often talked about fortune at the bottom of the pyramid. That's his book. And really it is, how can we do well by doing good? And again, social responsibility, our responsibility towards society has always got to be at the core or center going forward. And of course, profit, the survival of it, as the topic of today says, survival and then thrive. And so we see millions of businesses are failing in the face of pandemic. The World Economic Forum has suggested that almost 40 to 50% of businesses may not even reopen after the disaster. And so for those businesses who survive, for those businesses who are well enough, for those sectors, for those industries, for those governments who have plenty and can do something, what is their responsibility thereon? Because as one world, as one community across the world, the responsibility surely is on the leaders of these companies, the leaders of these businesses, the leaders of these countries. So in conclusion, then, the role of leadership is also very, very important to help and maintain that good citizenship. And my recent research again looked at the role of authentic and servant leadership. So how do you define these two leadership styles? And why would these two leadership styles be the best suited for businesses and business managers across the world? So authentic leadership is a type of leadership where leaders behave in a realistic, genuine, sincere way and are true to who they are as individuals. Yeah. And this authenticity, this truthfulness, this transparency is an important leadership attribute in not only the COVID-19, but going ahead from here. And of course, servant leadership, where it goes beyond and serving others in terms of, so these are the two. And I end with a quote from Sheikh Zayed, which is so much relevant in today's day and age. And Sheikh Zayed says that any ruler is only there to serve his people and secure for them prosperity and progress. To achieve this, he should live among his people, feel their wishes, know their problem, and this cannot be achieved if he isolates himself from them. And in a sense, it is all our responsibility, our collective responsibility as people who are involved with business, be it academia, be it the real world, to take upon himself and herself the responsibility in these dark times. Thank you.
Thank you for that informative speech, Professor Vijay. We will now turn our attention to our panel discussion, which will delve a bit deeper into some of the key issues surrounding how businesses survive and thrive sustainably in the midst of COVID-19. The session will be moderated by Dr. Kamal Milahi, Senior Manager of the Center for Responsible Business at Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Joining the discussion are our panelists, Professor Vijay Pereira, the Associate Professor of Strategic and International Business at Khalifa University, Steve Brunel, Managing Director of School Transport Services, Ibrahim Al-Zu'bi, Chief Sustainability Officer at Majid Al-Futim, and Martin Bradley, Chief Financial Officer at Delsco LLC. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Iman. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Martin, Steve, Ibrahim, and Vijay for your time and expertise today. And thank you, Vijay, for an excellent keynote speech, and all the points that you raised are very, very important. Thank you, Dr. Bilaid, for the opening remarks and emphasizing the importance of sustainability and the role of Dubai Dialogue. As Dr. Bilaid mentioned earlier, this is the 12th dialogue. And the key emphasis here is on dialogue. And Dubai Dialogue brings some key issues, the hot topics of the time. And we discuss them in a panel like this one with experts that they are dealing with this time with COVID-19, and gets their expertise, their perceptions, their insights, and the lesson learned from their experience of dealing with the issue of COVID-19 and the role of sustainability in COVID-19. And to start the panel, can I please ask the panelists to introduce themselves and their organizations very briefly? And may I start with Martin, please?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Kamal. Good morning. So my name is Martin Bradley, and I am the CFO of Dulsco, which is a homegrown Emirati organization and has over 85 years of experience in the region. Now, we specialize in the provision of integrated environmental solutions and manpower solutions, and we are the official waste management partner of Expo 2020. Our mission is to provide solutions that encourage communities to perform at their best, to live and operate sustainably, and create better outcomes for all. Sustainability is at the heart of what we do. Now, at the beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak, we formed a COVID Action Group task force that proactively adapted to the crisis. And we identified sustainable solutions to both businesses and communities. We also created social sustainability in our Dulsco weekly wellbeing programs, where we ensured that all employees were looked after to stay physically, mentally, and financially fit during the crisis. Now, we also continued to support communities during COVID-19 and moved into the sanitization solution domain, where we were working with prestigious entities such as Emirates and Dubai Municipality. And we were also licensed to collect and transport the medical waste from the COVID-19 fallout. And we're actively supporting quarantine communities during the crisis. We continue to focus on our circular economy approach that is aimed at eliminating waste and promoting the continual optimal use of resources with our oil re-refinery facility, our material recovery facility, and our construction and demolition waste facilities. And in addition to that, we have also recently signed an agreement with Neutral Fuels to recycle the waste cooking oil, which Dulsco collects from its customers, into clean, green biofuel. For Dulsco, sustainability is an integral part of our business, planning through to execution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. Can I just invite Ibrahim just to introduce himself and briefly introduce his organization?
Good afternoon, everyone, and hope everyone is well and safe. My name is Ibrahim Zabi. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer at Majd Al Futtaim. I'm also the Senior Associate at the University of Cambridge, Sustainability International Leadership Center. Majd Al Futtaim is a UAE conglomerate. We manage, build, and operate shopping malls, hotels, mixed-use projects, mixed-use communities, as well as we are we have retail business. We own Carrefour in 37 countries. We are in 18 markets, and we have the pleasure to serve more than 550 million customers. My role with the company as the custodian of the sustainability strategy, and mainly our net positive commitment, which is to give to the environment more than you take. I am based on the holding business, in the holding office, and I work with the three operating companies, which is the retail, the properties, as well as the lifestyle and leisure entertainment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Can I invite Steve to introduce himself and his organization, please?
Yes, good morning and hello to everyone. Thank you very much. My name is Steve, and I have the distinct pleasure of working within the transportation sector, primarily school transportation, but also we provide services in the corporate sector as well, and we're involved in Securitech business. Our business has been impacted, I think, as Dr. Vijay mentioned. You know, there are elements to a business and how it works. My focus is people, product, policy, process, and lastly profit. Well, you can only earn profit if there's revenue coming into a business, and you know, we effectively hit a wall in March with schools closing around 80% of our business, but there's no way that there's any element of abandonment with that. You know, we have a very large business, a very big workforce. So it's our responsibility to not only support the community, and actually we've found that there has been an exceptional amount of community spirit, both with suppliers that we work with, some of our landlords understanding the position that we're in, but also with regards to our people, the focus around making sure that the first 4 Ps, the people, the product, policy and process, are continually reviewed in readiness for when things come back to normal, what the new normal is. So we've continued to invest not only in our people, and Martin mentioned their well-care programs. I think all responsible companies have those type of programs in place to monitor and care for their employees, particularly during the lockdown periods. And we've got to a position now where we are ready to turn back on again. This is a very easy business to turn off, but it's an extremely difficult business to turn back on. When you have a large fleet of vehicles in excess of 3,000, you still need to manage your fleet, your assets, to ensure that they're ready for that time when they come back into service. So I think the word unprecedented has been used many times, but I don't think there's another word to really explain what everyone is going through currently. But that community spirit, certainly within the UAE, that I've noticed, has been absolutely fantastic. And we're very grateful to everyone that we work with and all of our stakeholders. And certainly, we hope that our role model performance will actually allow us to come out of the other side of this when we continue with our investment in our people, with our stakeholders, and some of the products that we now provide. Martin mentioned biofuel. We now have one particular school, GEMS Modern Academy, that has 126 vehicles that we're providing services to, that we launched in September when schools returned, albeit with limited students, are all now running on biofuel, which is great for the environment, and it will ensure that we can provide a sustainable solution moving forward, certainly as fossil fuel becomes more restricted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Briefly, Vijay, can you please, we introduce you, can you please just briefly tell us about your area of research and the kind of issues you deal with, so the audience know your area of expertise?
Thanks, Dr. Kamal. Yes, I'm Dr. Vijay Pereira again. I'm at the University of Khalifa. My key areas of research are emerging countries and the ethical dilemmas that businesses face across the world. Yeah, Dr. Kamal, thank you.
Thank you so much. And before we go to the questions, I would like just to maybe set the context for this dialogue and specifically this panel. And I agree with Steve. I can't find another word apart from saying we live in an unprecedented time. It is the key word at the moment. And we know that many businesses listening to you are grappling with the impact of COVID-19. And a lot of businesses are reconfiguring their strategies and practices and business model, not only to mitigate the impact of COVID-19, but trying to reposition themselves, as Dr. Vijay said earlier, for the emerging business landscape. It's a shifting business landscape, and they're trying to see where they fit in this new landscape. But history tells us that in such pivotal times, businesses make strategic choices that could have lasting impact, that could be perhaps irreversible or hard to reverse. One of those choices and decisions that businesses have to do, and they're looking at now, is the role of and commitment to sustainability. And if we read the business media and we listen to the thought leaders in this field, I see two opinions out there. There are those who argue that businesses that used to try to save the world now need to save themselves. And the key argument here, during such challenging times, businesses' continuity and development should be the primary focus, and it is at odds with investment in sustainability. Therefore, they argue pushing for business continuity and competitiveness means, unfortunately, sacrificing investment in sustainability, at least in the short term. But on the other hand, there are others that reject this zero-sum game or argument and advocate that business continuity and competitiveness are inextricably linked and must go hand in hand. And we've heard this from Dr. Belaid and from Dr. Vijay and from the brief introduction. Sustainability, they argue, is more than just good business ethics, and that's what we've been hearing this morning. It is a key part of any resilient business, and businesses, therefore, would be ill-advised to deprioritize sustainability. And as Dr. Bilaid said earlier, sustainability more than ever should be kept a top corporate priority. Against this background and two schools of thought, I would like to start by asking the panel the first question. Is sustainability a burden on business in this context of COVID-19? Is it a cost that will ultimately lower their business performance and therefore they should put it on the back burner? Or from your experience and your belief, is integrating sustainability in business plans, policies, and practices during and post-COVID-19 is going to enhance actually business performance and resilience and provide a new business opportunity? May I ask Steve to have a go at the question?
Thank you very much. I actually think it's time to sit back and do a reset. Responsible companies have good process policy in place. But in times of, certainly when during the lockdown period, I think it allows companies to accelerate some of their programs. Now, there may be winners and losers through this. And we do know that the economic impact means that there are companies that are falling by the wayside, and the strong will survive. And the strong doesn't necessarily mean financially strong. It could just be based on the framework that they have within their business. I mentioned before that 80% of our revenue stopped in March. We took a very proactive approach by contacting our suppliers, our customers, certainly those that had paid in advance for a service that they were now not receiving, to inform them that there would be some form of refund on that. Now, people have very long memories, certainly with your suppliers, your customers, your stakeholders. And if we can take the short-term pain now, then my view is there's longer-term gain. And that creates that level of sustainability for us as a business. I think there should be others within the industry, certainly within my industry, that take note of that role model performance measure. I have seen too many instances of immediate abandonment of employees, not in our business, but in others. And that is completely unacceptable. So those companies that wish to remain sustainable, that have a strong financial platform going forward, need to support their employees, need to support their customers, because people are fickle with brands as well. I'm not suggesting that STS is a global brand, but I think we're a brand in the UAE, and people buy into brand, but they also buy into convenience. So as convenient as we make our systems and our services, and people will come back to us.
Thank you very, very much, Steve. And Ibrahim, would you like to have a go at the question?
I think I'll tell you something. The normal business, as we know it, started disappearing or dying since Paris Agreement, since COP21. And from a pure risk and compliance point of view, if you don't look into environmental sustainability, there is a high risk on your financial targets, you're a high risk on your reputation, you're a high risk on long-term plans. So the question is on the how you embed sustainability, but I don't believe the business community should start thinking of sustainability as a burden. Sustainability is an enabler to have the new post-COVID-19 business model. So if you think of, and I think if I think of one positive thing for COVID-19, other than me being locked down, spending more time with my family, but is the business as usual, as we know it, is officially dead. It's a fact. Everyone is talking about post-COVID-19 era. Everyone is talking about post-COVID-19 businesses. So if something showed COVID-19 on businesses is the resilience and agility. And I believe that sustainability practitioners and even sustainable businesses can easily show resilience and agility to sustain their financial, economic, and reputational sustainability post-COVID-19. So it's not only by doing good, by doing well. I think that's a fact. We've been doing well by doing it since 2010 in Majd al-Futtaim, by implementing green buildings, by looking at reduction energy and carbon emissions. But I think the businesses should, if they want to be around, they should start thinking of what's my new sustainable business formula, how I can embed the triple bottom line approach, the planet, profit, people, in my strategy. How can I be aligned with the SDGs? How can I, but believe it or not, it's not only like, and I like what Steve mentioned about people have their brand oriented. Absolutely. We are talking about younger generation in the UAE and the region, where more than 60% of this population of our region is less than 30 years old. These guys, they do care where they shop. They do care how responsible the businesses are. So these are future customers, their future labor force. So we need to be ready for them. But also, when it comes to resilience and comes to your responsibilities as a company, you must look into how can I embed sustainability. So the question is on the how. I personally think if a business think of sustainability as a burden, it's a matter of time this business won't exist anymore. It's a normal thing, and I don't think it will be, because if you don't care about your natural resources, if you don't care about your people, I don't think the nature or the people will care much about you, either their customers or whoever they are. So the question is more on the how to embed sustainability. And I wrap up with this question is, we started to see regulations. So even if you don't care, you should, because governments started to implement and regulations. They have targets. You started having debates on global election campaigns on climate change, for example. It's a main thing now at the US election campaigns. Do you believe or you don't believe in climate change? One of the nominees started to share how many jobs will be created because of the green deal that they will sign. And also, even in our region, we started seeing countries like Saudi, UAE, Jordan, Egypt, looking at green regulations. We started to see countries like Egypt looking, issuing green bonds. And we see country issuing green bonds, it means has a commitment. So the world is changing. So you want to catch the train, you should think in a different way. Not, you'll miss it anyway.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim, for a very insightful answer. And Martin would like to add to Steve's and Ibrahim's comments on the question.
Yes, thank you. So it's interesting you've got this comparison between cost and profit. You know, typically, myself being a CFO, we look at value protection, creation, and reporting amongst many other things. But we are, I guess, infamous for being those that focus and identify on cost rather than necessarily opportunity. I say traditionally because that's not where we are now. And sustainability and profit are these two words that are almost at polar ends of business. Perception for me is that sustainability is a cost, and sometimes an unnecessary one that is sacrificed over profit. And I say that in a traditional manner, but it doesn't have to be the case. If I take what we are doing, what we do at Dulsco, and what the market says to us, and Steve's elaborated on this himself with the biofuels. We have an oil refinery which generates fuel, a construction waste recycling plant which generates aggregates at prices less than virgin raw material. So there is a commercial advantage, not just an environmental advantage, but a commercial advantage to move towards this market which has a more sustainable approach. Now, following on from that, taking what happened during COVID-19, one day there was a market that we all understood and we all operated in, and then the very next day, this market had changed. Airports were closed, tourists were gone, malls were closed. And we all experienced this and had to react to this new norm. Digital marketplace accelerated forward, as Professor Vijay has already alluded to. Digital communication thrived, and the types of PPE that we were looking at changed for the entire world overnight. Now, this was a market changing as a result of a pandemic. So imagine then a market changing as a result of a resource scarcity. Now, when you consider that resources are finite, then this change is inevitable. So isn't it better to change now than to wait until the crisis? And with hindsight, had we known that COVID was coming, would we have waited for it to take effect? Or would we have been in a better position to plan for this in advance and deal with the issues that it raised? For me, the situation we find ourselves right now is one of opportunity. Business is changing, and in fact, business has changed.
Thank you very, very much, Martin. And Vijay would like to briefly add to Martin's and Ibrahim's and Steve's answers, please.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Kamal. Yes, I absolutely agree with Steve, Ibrahim, and Martin. It certainly is a great opportunity. But again, how much of it we take forward, as Ibrahim was rightly saying, here is an opportunity. Now, apart from that, countries across the world will make it regulation. You have to fall in line. So why not be proactive as a business and start to strategize post-COVID? Because eventually that is what is going to happen. Those businesses who do not exist will be absolutely starting from scratch and will have to be sustainable. And those existing businesses will have to take on board more and more sustainability responsibilities, because the world will and has changed for the good, I would say. It's this sort of threat is not a threat forever. It's a great opportunity for the triple bottom line. So yes, I think very much, I think we are on the same page on this, and it's great, because I think sustainability and the future of sustainability is in good hands, because people are understanding it either by choice or by force. They know that this is the only way forward for our planet. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much, Vijay. If I can just maybe summarize the answers, there is I think a consensus here that sustainability is not a choice. And as Martin said, it's an opportunity now, and business need to be proactive, as Vijay mentioned. And if we are going maybe to have a hit in the short term, Steve mentioned that maybe short-term gain for long-term, so short-term pain for long-term gain. And Ibrahim actually emphasized the issue. There is no choice. There is no alternative. It's not whether you invest in sustainability, it's how. And that's the question that I'm going to ask the panelists now, is how has your organization responded to COVID-19? And how are you mitigating against the impact of COVID-19? I'll start with Martin, please.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think I would reiterate what Professor Vijay said at the beginning, which is, and I think you said yourself, Dr. Kamal, all businesses throughout the world have just gone through the most turbulent experience, and possibly of our entire careers. Staff safety, cost control, working capital management, understanding of the turbulent landscape were all primary concerns. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, at the onset of the pandemic, we created a COVID-19 action group. And from this, a business continuity plan was prepared, and we started assessing impacts from an operational and financial standpoint. It was of critical importance for us to understand where we were heading. So it's important from a company's perspective to try and see what's coming, what we're going to be impacted by this pandemic, and what therefore actions we need to take and can take to protect everything, all the stakeholders from within our company. So we proactively started assessing the risks and the impacts on all our contracts with clients and vendors, and we engaged an external agency to conduct a risk assessment involving business functions and address key risks and how to mitigate them. I'll pick up on something that Steve said previously, which I think is really critical, and I fully agree with what he said. To us at Dulsco, our people are our number one priority. We have over 14,000 workers across the region. and protecting them was our #1 priority, making sure that people received their pay and received their pay on time during this incredibly challenging time was at the front. That's one side. You then have the safety and security. So what we went about doing was looking at segregating our workforce across multiple accommodation sites, looking at specialised isolation units, incorporating DMC and the DHA protocols, looking obviously at temperatures and distance and masks and gloves, doing toolbox talks, employing sanitisation tunnels, looking at transport protocols, passengers separators within the buses, driver isolation within the buses, and training all of our workers continually on personal hygiene, putting in posters and audio broadcasts within the buses and in multiple languages, and also to the office workers, and providing digital platforms enabling work from home, and looking at mental well-being, partnering with LifeWorks, and looking at physical well-being, where we were very fortunate enough to have an in-house fitness talent and a qualified personal trainer to take us. And we also gave weekly courses on financial well-being. So, everyone was affected by COVID, in a different way. We're all in the same storm, but in different boats. And I think that there was a lot of challenges that we were faced. Picking up also on something else Steve had said was the community feel. Now, I don't know whether everyone agrees with this, but from the aspect that you go to work and you say good morning and hello to people, and it's a greeting, it's a casual sort of thing. During COVID, people were calling and saying, how are you? And genuinely, how are you? Are you managing, coping okay? Is there anything I can do to help? There certainly was a broader community support feel that certainly I experienced, and I think that was a fantastic thing to know, and something that I certainly hope is something we take forward as well.
Thank you so much, Martin. Steve?
Thank you. A lot of what Martin has said was what I was going to say as well. But in terms of how are we managing? I said at the beginning, 80% of our business is supporting the education sector, and that's gone through massive change. There is a new normal. We know at the moment social distancing and certainly physical attendance at school is quite limited. And is impacting all suppliers. But it's also important to understand that at some point there will be that new normal. I don't know when that is. I don't know what the timeline's going to be. But school transportation is fundamental. It reduces congestion, and I will stand and have that discussion with everybody that it is the safest form of transport. And at the moment, the services that we're providing are a safety tunnel from school, or a safety tunnel from back again. If you consider all of the safety practices, protocols that we have in place, I don't see there's any safe transportation that allows us to support the education sector. We've also been quite lucky in that we can repurpose some of our vehicles that we're not using currently. To put numbers into perspective, we have a fleet of just under 3,000 school buses across the UAE, supporting around 80 schools. It's not a proportionate reduction with the number of students because of journey times, geographical spread. So we are usually transporting around 80,000 students per day. At the moment, we're carrying 5,000 that are actually physically attending school. But we still require 50% of our assets, our vehicles, and our people and drivers to support that. So it's very, very disproportionate, and obviously that then has an impact on cost. However, we continue to work through, because we know at some point there will be change. The repurposing of vehicles has allowed us to support businesses that have been impacted by social distancing on vehicles. It is inconceivable and unreasonable to expect companies to go out and purchase double the amount of vehicles that they require to move their staff around while there are capacity restrictions in place. So we've been quite fortunate there. But that doesn't mean we're going to stand still. So our Securitech business has been invaluable. It's allowed us to support many of the innovations that we now provide in our vehicles, our IVMS, in-vehicle management systems, that support the reduction of accidents, that monitor drivers' fatigue, oral intake through facial recognition. And I think combined with the services that we're providing and the technology that we're working through will place us in a better position when we come out of this. There are clients that previously may not have selected us because price point is important. However, value is more important than price point at times. So there are clients that are now coming to us, whereas before we may have been a few dirhams more expensive, but now they actually see the value that is being provided. Certainly that has come out of the pandemic with regards to safe practices and certainly business resilience and how companies operate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. Ibrahim, I know we have limited time because I know you've been doing a lot of things, but if you could just maybe summarize the key point, what has Majid Al Futtaim been doing as a response to COVID-19, and how are you mitigating against the impact of COVID-19?
Well, thank you very much. I'll be very brief. I wrote a couple of points here, but first of all, as sustainability team, we look at climate change as a pandemic. So I think we were the best team to lead on this as we've been trying to deal with a pandemic for the last 10 years. So the minute we knew about this, I've been leading the big part of the crisis management committee, as well as health and safety across countries. So the way we looked at COVID-19 since April, by the way, we looked at our main stakeholders, our staff, 44,000 plus staff, our customers, more than 550 million, our partners in the governments in 18 markets, 18 countries, our investors, especially in the last green bonds we issued late last year with our commitments on ESG reporting to them, which is part of our commitment that we did not want to stop, and our supply chain. So we put our staff, especially in Carrefour, we have more than, talk about the UAE, more than 20,000. We dealt with them as frontliners. So the way we dealt with them exactly as we deal with nurses and hospitals. We had clear instructions and open channels with the government here in the UAE and other governments that we shouldn't stop the food supplies in our shelves in Carrefour, and our work to ensure that there is the prices. So first of all, we needed to ensure that the prices will be the same and even making more offers. So for example, one of the things we did with the online education is we worked with our supply chain to provide discounted laptops and iPads for the students as well as customers. So we implemented a lot of sanitization. We shifted from cleaning to sanitization since April in all our assets. We created all protocols. So since April, we've been dealing exactly. Now we're in October, we are still implementing the same protocol that we introduced in April, which is distance working from anywhere, not only working from home, as well as we invested a lot. Well, we've been investing a lot recently in the digital platforms. So you've seen that a lot of dark stores when it comes to online Carrefour shopping, as well as working with governments to ensure the supply chain won't be impacted by payments, for example. So the business as usual for us, we work with, for example, with local farmers. We did not even look at the big local farmers. We went to small local farmers and we did a direct purchase from them where we ensured that even during the lockdown, they get their products, fruits and vegetables to our stores. When it comes to the supply chain, we have different supply, not only Carrefour supply chains, we also have construction sites. So we implemented with our tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers when it comes to contracting, when it comes to labor accommodation, a very stringent and health and safety protocol that we almost zero cases in our construction sites, either in Oman or in the UAE or other sites. We learned a lot. I have to tell you, it's been a learning curve. One of the things also you talked about staff. During the lockdown, cinemas were closed. We managed to reintroduce around more than 1,500 of our cinema staff to our Carrefour business. And these are people, they really wanted to help, not only to keep their jobs. I'm still committed to the basic income of our staff, but we wanted people, these people wanted to help, they wanted to make a difference during these pandemics. So I have to tell you, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of the whole panel, it's been a learning curve, and whoever comes out of this pandemic, I think we become pandemic experts, God forbidden. So it's been tough times, but interesting, and showed the togetherness that we have in Majd al-Futtaim, internally and externally.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim. Dr. Vijay, if you may, can you please just give us very briefly, from what you observe and from your research, how are organizations around the world responding to COVID-19 and how they mitigating against the impact of COVID-19?
Yeah, I think the how question is an important one you ask, Dr. Kemal. Really, I think I would focus on the role and responsibility of higher education and scholars like professors and researchers in different universities. And in this sense, Khalifa University has been at the forefront of quickly reaching out when the pandemic broke with researchers from across the world and finding solutions. And we have come up with very innovative ways in which to lead on that. Also, in a sense, I think it is our duty and social responsibility as professors in higher education to show the way from our own research on previous pandemics and previous crises, to find ways and help and put forward to businesses different ways in which one can really help. And so in that sense, Dr. Kemal, I think the responsibility on academics of those in higher education and researchers across the world is very important.
Thank you so much, Vijay. Just maybe, it's not in the questions, but we have been doing the research here at Dubai Chamber since March, since the lockdown. And we've been working with companies, and this is qualitative research, doing interviews with CSR and sustainability people, and asking them what their organization is doing, the challenges they're facing, the innovations that they're coming up with. And we have just finalized the analysis of this huge data that we have. And it really, it's what you have said. And one thing that we have noticed, that most organizations took care of the number one asset, which is their employees and then their customers. One issue that is not very clear from the data that we have, and perhaps you can help us. And when we talk about sustainability, we talk about economic, which is profit, planet, and people. We covered a lot the people side in the answers. Can you just give us some, briefly, some insight on what your organizations are doing in terms of the environmental issues and community initiatives that you used to do before? And maybe I'll start with Ibrahim this time, especially in terms of community activities and initiatives that you used to do before COVID-19 and the community initiatives that you have been doing since COVID hit.
I'll tell you two things. One, when it comes to environment, our commitment is still the same. We are still committed to be net positive in carbon and water by 2040. Of course, this has been impacted because of the lockdown. So, for example, the offsite generation launch in Jordan, where 90% of our energy will come from renewables, has been impacted because of the travel ban. But we're still on track and we're still committed. And even soon we'll be launching our circle economy commitment with our partners in the region. But when it comes to community parts, the approach there has been different, maybe for what we don't look at it as charity, we look at it as socio-economic impact. So we measure, we've been doing a research for the last 2 years on our socio-economic impact on the communities we serve. And we made even a case study about Barsha area and Mall of the Emirates. So if you remember Barsha before Mall of the Emirates and Barsha right now, and we even reached out to people who had really good stories about this. And we came up with a socio-economic framework that we are using right now for our community engagement pillars. So we are focusing as well as we always did when it comes on well-being. As well as environment. The only difference is we are digitalizing the experience. So we're looking at the customer experience journey. And now we are digitalizing it through the malls, through the apps, and the experience itself through the different technological applications we have. The commitment is still there. Actually, it's now more than ever. We're looking at the different the plastic, single-use plastic. It's been there as well. So we are on track to be by 2025. We'll be banning single-use plastic. We achieved this target in countries like Georgia before the target. We are focusing now on reintroducing. We banned single-use face masks, and we introduced a reusable, affordable fabric mask. We worked with the health authorities. So we're on an accelerator program, actually, thanks to the pandemic. Because again, you've said it yourself, Dr. Kamel, is that if we don't do that, we might be bombarded with a lot of regulations post-COVID-19.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim. And Martin, if you just give us, you covered the so many issues of sustainability, but for this particular question, if you could maybe comment on what your organization is doing during COVID-19 and share your experience with issues to do with community initiatives.
Sure, okay. I mean, sustainability in community has always been at the heart of our organisation. We've recently been awarded the Dubai Chamber CSR label again this year, and have continued to improve our CSR score by addressing 7 of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals through our activities, enrolling over 600 volunteers and over 21 volunteer hours. I agree with what Ibrahim said, that in so many ways COVID-19 has accelerated and continues to accelerate a lot of businesses' transition into communities. But I would say for Dalsco, our position hasn't changed. It has always been at the front. As I mentioned at the beginning, community is part of our mission. And the type of company we are, being an environmental company, we are continually, all our decisions are made on environmental goals, community goals, and financial. There's an alignment. There's no compromise on one or the other. What I would say, just to wrap it up, would be that I think that community engagement is perhaps where we are now focusing our efforts on to enhance that.
Thank you very much, Martin. Steve?
Thank you, Kamel. I just want to refer to our business as an iceberg. You know, everybody sees a yellow bus or a white bus on the road, and you know, it's simple. There's a driver, there's a bus, and there it is, just coasting along. Actually, there's more behind what you don't see in terms of, you know, the administration, the maintenance, all of the areas that we talk around in terms of our policies and how we manage our B2C, B2B. You know, one of the key messages that I just want to get out there, and it really does affect transportation, not only the private transportation sector, but also the public transportation sector. So in terms of social responsibility, there are many people that live in the UAE that don't have access to a private car, that don't have, you know, the funds to pay for taxis, whether that be Uber or Careem. So a key message here is social distancing without social exclusion. So we've been doing a lot of messaging out on media bursts, not only to parents and the student community, just about how safe transportation is. And the bottom line is, we know that, you know, we have the UAE 2030 vision, which is about reduction of road traffic accidents. It's about modal shift. It's about convincing people that actually transportation is more accessible now than it was when I first arrived working with the RTA on the bus master plan, you know, in 2007. It's more integrated now. So our responsibility as a transport provider out to the communities has been supporting where we can, reinforcing assurance, keen and lively assurance messages about what we're doing today to not create a problem in another area just because people don't believe transportation is safe. That's all I'd like to say on that point.
Thank you so much. Just for the second part of this question is, we know that it is a very, very fast moving environment. The business landscape, the new business landscape, still not very clear. And people are making decisions with limited information because every day you have something new, and it's very, very hard to really have all the information to make those decisions. So organizations, as I think you all mentioned, it's guided by your belief and your Northern Star. When I can hear the Northern Star here is sustainability is a must, is not a nice to have. It's something that is an opportunity, and it's something that we have to do. And I think that's very, very nice to hear. But this is for Vijay. Given that organizations are having limited information, they are moving, I think somebody put it, it's like fixing a flat tire while the car is actually moving. And how do you advise organizations from the research that you have done on agility and making decisions in uncertain times? What advice do you give for organizations that are thinking of sustainability and making decisions while the situation is moving very, very fast?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Kamal. Well, there is no one way of doing it, as you will appreciate. It depends on which business you are, what position you are, what support system you have, what leadership you have, what is your dependence on different partners, the government, and so on. And so there is no one way of doing it. However, the principles, as you rightly say, of agility and resilience will still apply. And those firms, those companies, those businesses who try to be proactive and try to keep an open mind in a sense, but also I think in terms of strategy, have different plans. If plan A doesn't work, how do you then move to plan B and C? And I think also seeking support, speaking to other businesses, discussing it, looking at what is happening around in the environment. All of this.
We lost Mr. Vijay. We lost you, Vijay. I think we're having. Perhaps we move to the next question. I think Vijay is having some difficulties connecting. And this question actually it has been asked by the audience. It was a planned question, but a question that has been raised by the audience. And they're asking if we want to start planning for and implementing sustainability issues, where do we start? Can you please give us some advice of how you started your process? Walk us through the process and how you put this sustainability, whether it's strategy or initiatives together. So they're asking, what are the practical steps that we need to do to start our sustainability and start looking at the issues that you have mentioned earlier? I'll give this question to Martin, please.
Thanks, Kamal. Well, I mean, look, for me, when you're taking a step and a change in direction, and you're wanting to start looking at sustainability when you haven't looked at it before. I mean, for me, I guess that you're wanting to look to make sure that you have something which is necessary in the marketplace. Are you talking about offering a service? Are you talking about offering a product? It is about identifying the need, identifying the demand, and then what it is that you can provide that is sustainable. Now, there are, I guess, I would say, situations in a market where price is dictated. Steve's mentioned that in some cases, price has actually not been a factor when safety overrides when safety is becoming an overriding precedence, especially in this changing time. So not, you know, market norms that you would necessarily think of as, let's say, a commoditized service or a commoditized product don't always exist. And so I think I would agree with what Professor Vijay had mentioned just before he was cut off, which is You need to talk to other business. You need to try and collaborate. You look at other people that have done this before. You investigate as much as you can, and you need to find the market. You need to look at what's available. And of course, sustainability is one aspect. I've mentioned about how financial sustainability, cost, etc., doesn't have to sit on its own, doesn't have to be the overriding factor. So it's to bring in all these factors into account. When we're looking at opportunities within Dulsco, as I mentioned to you, everything's about sustainability. So we're looking actually at projects, for example, taking a waste product where we have as a source and converting it into a new raw material. This is the ideal, but it has to have a financially viable solution, or else the business at Dulsco is not sustainable. So it's a wider picture and something you need to take fully into account.
Thank you so much. Ibrahim, I mean, you have a very, very comprehensive sustainability strategy. And the people are asking if we want to start our sustainability initiatives or strategy or plans for our organization for during COVID and post-COVID, where do we start from? What are some of the lessons from your experience that you can share?
That's a very good and important question. And I think the strategy 101 is you should know why you need to do sustainability. You should ask your leadership why they want to do it. For us, for example, when I ask this question, we identified the cost saving, the long-term profitability, the brand reputation, the license to operate, as well as the corporate citizenship. So we tick this all. This is for an agreement. Then you need to look at your materiality issues. And from materiality issues, you need to link with your business objectives. If you don't link to your business objectives, you will be in silo. You will be someone who doesn't talk to anyone in the organizations. It's great to save the world, but it's much better to save your world, to save it sustainably. So you link to your business objectives, as well as you want to link to a global perspective. You have the SDGs. You don't need to do the homework. You have 17 SDGs. You can choose from them. But having said that, I think Martin mentioned about the financial sustainability. I predict, and actually I believe this is the way we look at it, the business reset. Sustainable finance will be one of the enablers to reset the businesses in the world, not only in this part of the world. We just saw Egypt issuing green bonds. So the easiest way to look at the ESG, look at what's your environmental objectives, what's your social ambitions, as well as if you have governance. It's the right time now to use an ESG platform, because with this, if you're an SME, guess what? You can have access to capital. If you are a big business and you'd like to go for bonds or even IPOs or whatever it is, or even go to a bank for a green loan, the first thing they will ask you, do you have a sustainability policy or not? So if you don't answer these questions, you won't have access to capital. So the good news is, post-COVID-19, I expect that we will see a lot of governments, a lot of banks, a lot of private sector, a lot of investors will go into sustainable finance for pure low-risk implications, not only for being nice to the environment, which is good. I'm happy with that. And I think it will be a great tool to have access to capital. And back to the point, doing well by doing good. The norm will be sustainable finance. So you look at your ESG, start with sustainability materiality issues, link to your business objectives, and you'll be fine. Don't think I'm saving the world. Start by saving your world, and the world will be fine.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim. Steve, would you like to add to Ibrahim's and Martin's very good suggestions?
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting topic. For me, it comes back to mindset within the business at the very beginning. Do you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset? Are you a flat structure and hierarchical? And I don't necessarily mean in terms of reporting lines. Is there someone at the top of the business that is more focused on profit and return rather than, developing the business going forward? A lot of the businesses, I'm sure we've all heard of the sigmoid curve. A lot of businesses, get to that point where the returns are great, they don't need to refocus, they don't need to change their business model, and then all of a sudden a new boy comes along or a new model comes along and knocks them off the shelf and their business is gone. Just take a look at the likes of Kodak, Nokia, those sort of businesses. So for me, when we're talking about sustainability programs, you've got to have the right mindset to begin with. You've got to have that yes mindset, that growth mindset, I will change mindset, the continuous improvement cycle. And then you've got to have the right processes within the business to say, are we planning? So there's in the health and safety world, there's an approach which is plan, do, check, and act. It's that continuous improvement cycle. Continue planning, continue planning, continue doing, continue checking, and continue acting. Now, if that is part of your management structure within the business and everybody is bought into that, then what you'll be doing is looking at your product and how you can improve that product and how you can then make it more sustainable.
Thank you so much, Steve. I'm sure the person who asked the question is going to find the answers very useful. Just maybe one part I want to put to Vijay on this one. Just to add to what Steve, Martin, and Ibrahim said, would you suggest to organizations, we all talked about opportunity for change. This is a chance to really have sustainability on the agenda. Would you suggest to organizations like the one who asked the question to have incremental change, start slow, and as Steve say, aligned with your values and beliefs, or would you like to really have a look at your sustainability? So this is a chance for us to really have radical change and start sustainability in a big way.
Yeah, thanks, Kemal. I hope you can hear me now. Yeah,
we can.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Yeah, I think there is again no one way, but it also depends on your organization life cycle and on other aspects. In the case of Ibrahim's organization, they're well set. There are strategies in place, but in comparison, if you compare other companies, smaller companies, probably they will have to take more time and start, as I mentioned, tick the box first and then incrementally go up. But again, the positioning of every organization, as we know, in the new normal is going to be that sustainability will be the new normal. And the starting point will be do the minimum that is prescribed and thereon move ahead. I don't think any country across the world, when they start off, will not have sustainability. By default, they will have it much more than when the lockdown started in March and April. And so in a sense, to answer your question, it will purely depend on how the key regulations are ticked and thereafter on the position that each of the firms are in. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Vijay. Can I just now move to the questions asked by the attendees? And I can see that so many of them we have answered. There is one question going to Steve, but you can have a go at it. It's not to Steve, but to everyone. In sector like yours, Steve, where there are people are moving to maybe studying online, and we're seeing maybe a reduction in demand of such service, especially during lockdown, or if there are further restrictions in the future. How do you see your sector, although this is not linked to sustainability in the people, planet, and profit, maybe if we can focus on the profit side or the economic side, how do you see the sector being hit? And what are the innovations, or how are you going to restructure the business such as yours for, let's not say post-COVID, but in the new business landscape?
Yeah, thank you. I actually did answer that question directly back to privately, yes. Whilst we were busily talking there. Look, it's a really interesting question. I think that there's going to be an element of online learning. Online learning existed prior to COVID-19. Distant learning existed prior to COVID-19. I'm not an educationalist, and I'm certainly not somebody who would be the judge to say whether physical attendance was best or online learning. But you know, if we look at where we've got to from where we started, online learning 100%, and then a demand for transportation, because there are many parents that want their children at school, you know, in terms of confidence, social interaction, etc. So I think there will be a change. It may take 12 months for the demand to come back to the that before, but that's all going to be around, and there's not going to be a silver bullet to this. That's going to be around the level of assurance, the safety, the programs, and how it's managed on capacities. So I don't have the answer to say, how will the business look in 12 months' time? What I can say is that we are managing with what we know today, and we're trying to get ahead of the curve to ensure that we can provide the right level of service. In terms of the private sector, but mass transportation globally is a requirement. So what we need to do is just adapt how we're providing services to meet that demand. If you look when you drive or you walk through Dubai at the moment, you will see thousands of people queuing to get on public buses, queuing to get on the metro. So the demand is there. It's just at which point do we make it easier for those individuals that require transportation to be able to travel. So, and that's where we need to adapt. So social distancing has affected the metro, it's affected public transport, it's affected taxis, but you're slowly seeing it easing. So as far as I'm concerned, with the colleagues that I have within Serco, there are no physical restrictions on the metro now, apart from common sense in terms of social distancing. On the buses, there still remains social distancing. As we know in taxis, the restrictions are easing. The plastic shields have come down, and you can now have up to 4 in a large taxi, as long as you're from the same family. So I think as things ease, the demand will come back. Companies need to be ready to be able to provide that. I think that's where companies like us will be able to step in and fill that slot.
Thank you so much, Steve, for a very, very comprehensive answer. I noticed that you have answered it on private chat here. I know that we are running over. We have 17 minutes over, and Mr. Ibrahim had prior commitments. So thank you, Ibrahim, and hope we'll see you again in our events. Thank you for your time and expertise. Just maybe last question that's from me. For those who have attended today Dubai Dialogue, and it's a lot of people, what would you say to them very briefly? Maybe 3 things, 3 takeaways, if they want to really embed sustainability in their organizations. I think what we have agreed on, that sustainability is not a choice. It's something that is to make business sense. It's not just an ethical things to do. And so what would you recommend, maybe the 3 top things to those listening to us, starting maybe this time with Vijay?
Yes, thanks, Dr. Kamel. I think 3 takeaways going forward from the present situation is let's all be collected and united as one human race. I think that is the key first one, because we are all across the world, despite of differences and despite of regions where we come from, are still facing the same challenge. So I think that unity as one humankind facing one challenge is the most important. The second is to build resilience, not only as organizations, but as teams and communities and individuals. And third is to be agile and be open to possibly little bit more pain and little bit more extension of the uncertainty, because these 3 things going forward, unity, agility, and resilience, is possibly the only way in which we can overcome the existing challenges going forward.
Thank you so much, Vijay. Martin, what are your 3 top tips?
For me, it would be about a cultural change. Sustainability has to be something throughout the entire organization. And to many organizations, and I think some of our panelists have already alluded to this, the culture of sustainability doesn't automatically exist in many organizations. And so in order to move towards this, we have to have this change. Financial integration. As I mentioned, cost does not have to be the enemy. Steve's mentioned about being able to have a premium for sustainable solutions, whether it's safety and security, but also it provides a differentiation to improve the quality and the service offering that you provide. And it can do. So cost does not have to be the enemy. So financial integration. And my final one would be innovation. you know, I think what this experience has taught us is that what's here today is not here tomorrow, and you have to find ways of utilising and sweating those assets in ways that you would never think traditionally that you would use them for. And that's something that does not happen overnight. Unfortunately, the market can change overnight, as we've experienced, but our ability to adapt, to be resilient, to be agile is a challenging one. So we need to be looking at innovation.
Thank you so much, Martin. I think we didn't talk a lot about innovation, but that's a very, very important element that you brought in. Steve, if you could just share with us your 3 top tips to the audience that are listening to us.
Thanks, Kamal. My top tips have already been used. I'm just crossing out words and top tips that I'd already had. So look, I'm going to come up with 3.
That's the disadvantage of being third.
I know, yeah. So look, for me, network, communicate, listen, and that's all about leadership and emotion as well. If you network, if you look at the role models that are there, and I take the view that I don't want to be a role model performer because I want to sit aloft and be on some form of platform. I want to be a role model so that other businesses can look at us and say, we want to be like them, because that improves everything for everyone. So I think if you can take the view, you want to be a role model performer because you want other businesses to be like you. So that's important when we talk about networking and sharing. Don't be protective, open up. You know, Martin and I both alluded to the community spirit point, and Martin's absolutely right. That, you know, everybody that you speak to now, and probably their emails when they sign off, it's take care, be safe, and best regards. And we can never overuse those words because it is a true value. You know, emotional intelligence is very, very important. And so I would come back to this whole point around look at other businesses, speak to other businesses, understand what they do. And good businesses will open up to you and will be transparent and help you in that journey.
That's a very, very wise words, Steve. I know we are running out of time. I was planning to summarize the key lessons from the panel. I don't think I can do that. There is so much to do that. I'm not attempting to do that. All what's left from me to say thank you so much, Steve, Martin, Vijay, and Dr. Bilaid in background, and Ibrahim. Thank you for your time and expertise. I hope the audience have benefit from your dealing with the questions and the issue that we discussed today. I would like to say thank you to the audience for being with us. And with that, say thank you again to the audience, thank you to the panel, and pass on to Iman to close the Dubai Dialogue 2020.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kamal. A big thank you to our guest speaker and panelists for sharing their insights and leading the thought-provoking discussions today. We also thank you all for your participation and kind attention, and we look forward to seeing you in the next Dubai Dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.